Good morning, Michael!
Good morning, Daniel.
Good morning, everybody. This is Running Around Jerusalem, episode 9. Why are you shushing me?
Because we're at the Jerusalem Bird Observatory.
And we're going to see holy migrations. We're going to see holy migrations? I don't know if we're actually going to see them.
We're definitely going to talk about
We're definitely going to talk about them. Mike, what are we going to see today?
So we're over in the western side of the city in the government compound. We're going to go by the Supreme Court, by the Knesset. We're at the Bird Observatory. And it's one of the best places in the city to run because you got these wide open spaces, no traffic, and we got some incredible stories about migrations, immigrations, people, birds, whatever, cats moving all over the place.
Sounds great. Enjoy coming on with us. Subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the Facebook. We would love to see you, and please communicate us coming at you next time running around Jerusalem. So, Michael, we're at the Jerusalem Bird Observatory.
That's right.
Why does Jerusalem have a bird observatory? What's interesting about it?
So why Jerusalem has it, I'm not really sure, but Israel has them because Israel is one of the best places in the entire world to do bird watching.
Why
and
so?
What they're doing right here actually is really fascinating. They're catching the birds,
Marking
they're ringing them.
Yeah.
Okay, this is one of the 3 ringing centers they have in Israel. One is in Nahlaot, all the way down the south.
Right.
One is in the Hula Valley up in the north. And the third one is here in the center of the country in Israel. And why is Israel such a great place?
Right, yeah, why so?
Roads of 3 different continents.
I
and
see.
You actually have about 500 million birds that pass through Israel every year.
So on the migration route.
Kind, not the
winged kinds.
Slang for the girls. Right?
No! That's a disgrace. So we're saying that because we're on the connection between Africa and Europe and Asia, we're on the main migration route.
Exactly. And this is migration season right now. November and
Right
March.
now?
Yeah.
Okay.
And look where we are. 2 minutes away, and we're right at the Knesset.
What's the Knesset?
Knesset in Israel's parliament.
So at this funny looking pillar that I have here, what is this?
Well, I know you know what it is because Hanukkah's coming.
What are you talking about? I don't know anything. That's my whole job in the world, is not to know anything and just ask dumb questions. What is that?
This is the menorah, right?
See?
So the menorah was this 7-branch candelabra that sat in the temple during ancient times.
I see.
And it's like the Jewish
symbol. Right, yeah, for sure.
We actually light a version of it on the holiday of Hanukkah, which is coming up.
Very shortly.
We're going to do a run about that, so check in later for the Hanukkah.
Let's do the donut mile, guys. The donut mile, yeah.
That too. Now, when you think about Jewish symbols, what comes to mind?
Star of David.
Star of David, that's what everyone thinks about, right?
Always Star of David.
But the truth of the matter is the Star of David is actually a brand new symbol when it comes to, in Jewish terms. It's really only became a Jewish symbol back in the 1600s for the first time.
Oh, really?
At the behest of a Jesuit priest.
So really this is the ultimate Jewish symbol, and hence it's opposite our main area of law.
Exactly, the Knesset,
Makes sense.
right?
Cool. So Michael, was the Knesset always there?
Well, no. And to understand it, migrating over here, let's go back to 1948.
Okay. State of Israel was created.
State of Israel is created. It's actually declared in Tel Aviv.
Right.
Jerusalem at that point is under siege.
Yeah.
So even if they want Jerusalem to be the capital, which is what they want, they can't practically have it there. So when the state is declared, the Knesset's first meeting in Tel Aviv.
I see.
But shortly thereafter, in 1949, in December, they moved the Knesset to Jerusalem. Now, not this original location. We're actually going to pass the original location later on this run.
It's on King George Street, isn't it?
That's right.
We spoke about King George Street. Run number 2, people, check it out.
But it gets moved over here in the early 1960s.
Right.
Is when they finally build this building. Having the Knesset and the seat of government moved to Jerusalem, in and of itself, was actually controversial at the time, and it was a big debate.
Why so?
Well, the United Nations and the international community didn't really want to make Jerusalem part of one country or the other. They actually originally intended to make an international place. But because during the war, basically it gets divided up between
Israel and Jordan.
And Israel, exactly. They kind of come to agreement, hey, we're going to control both these places, and we'll divide it up amongst us.
We'll decide what we're going to do, thank you very much.
Exactly, and from the very beginning, it becomes Israel's capital.
Was there kind of approach of new Israel intellectuals that Tel Aviv was kind of the first city of Israel, so therefore government should be there?
So the interesting, so Tel Aviv really in modern times, right? It's the first modern Hebrew city
Yeah,
that's established
yeah,
back in 1909. So yeah, so for the people who want to kind of create this new Israel, like
New state, yeah.
Jew, and kind of sever connections to the past, it makes sense.
there was a push to keep it in Tel Aviv, even from within the Israeli side.
There was, but it didn't gain that much traction.
I see,
Especially
okay.
also Ben Gurion, who was one of the big bulldozers of the time, right?
Yeah.
One of the founding fathers
For
of
sure.
the modern state. He said, you're not going to have it without Jerusalem.
I see.
Jerusalem is the heart.
Is key. I see. Okay. So we've come around the corner from the Knesset, Bird Observatory, and now I've got another massive building in front of me. What's this one?
Well, this is the Supreme Court. So I mentioned that we're going to be in the government complex, right?
Right.
So we've got the legislative branch over there.
Yes.
The Bird Observatory, which
Which is an important part of the legislative branch, yeah.
okay, and the Supreme Court building. And I don't know if you noticed, but there's this direct line of sight right here from the judiciary to the legislative branch.
I see.
So it's pretty cool the way they've laid it out here.
Aha. To kind of connect all the sides of the law.
Yes. Of course, on the other side, the building connects directly to this massive garden shopping mall, but that's another story.
We'll see that in a minute. Okay. So we spoke about the fact that the Knesset sort of migrated, if you like, to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv, and then to this official spot from King George Street. And this is the other side of the law, which is very much involved in creating the laws. The other side of the law, which is very much involved in creating the laws. Jesus. Okay, I'm talking utter nonsense. Okay, here we go. Here we go. No, doesn't appear to be. Nothing's blocking it.
Nothing like technical issues, or mechanical issues, as the case may be.
So let's give to our viewers and to me a good example of the two sides of the law working together on a very important, something that affects everyone's day-to-day life.
So if we go back to the beginning of the state, right? 1949, what's happening around this time? The war is coming to an end.
Right.
But you're also going to have mass migrations of Jews from all over the place coming into the land of Israel, right?
Uh-huh.
Why? First of all, you've got hundreds of thousands of people in displaced persons camps
Across Europe.
after the war.
Right.
Number two is that a lot of them get kicked out of the Arab countries that were there. So they're going to all come into the new Jewish state.
Uh-huh.
And one of the laws the Knesset right over there passes early on is something called the law of return.
Okay.
This is really an unbelievable law, which essentially says that Jews anywhere can become a citizen of the state of Israel, basically within an hour of getting here.
I see.
Right? I did that. You probably did that as well.
Yeah.
Okay. But it goes back well to the beginnings of the state. Now, there's a great court case about that.
Supreme Court to my left.
Supreme Court case.
Yes.
Challenging in some ways the legislation in the law of return.
I see.
There was this guy, we call him the Brother Daniel. Okay, Brother Daniel sounds like a,
It's not me. Yeah.
right, sounds like Catholic priest, right?
Right.
Because he was,
Okay.
but not originally.
I see.
He was born in 1920 in Poland, okay, near Auschwitz,
Uh-huh.
and he was a Jew.
Uh-huh.
And he manages to survive the war, but not only that, he rescues a bunch of Jews from the area of Mir. Like, there are probably about 200 Jews that he saved during the war.
I see.
And part of that time, he actually is hiding out in a monastery. And during that time, he actually converts
He
to
converts.
Christianity.
Right.
So he accepts Christianity, converts to it, takes on the name as Brother Daniel.
I see.
All right. And then in the 1950s, there's a lot of like upheaval in Poland, and he decides, hey, I'm going to move to Israel. And so he applies to move to Israel and become a citizen under the law of return.
Uh-huh. Okay. So far, so good.
Yeah, except that he had converted to Christianity. And the law of
I
return
see.
is supposed to be for Jews.
So the Supreme Court case was whether he qualifies because he is no longer, I don't know, he no longer officially recognizes himself as a Jew or something like that. No, is
So
that?
it gets even more complicated, because if you asked him, he says, well, I was born a Jew. I'm part of the Jewish nation. My religion, though, is Christianity.
Right.
And he was rejected for his citizenship by the law of return. Ultimately, the whole case goes up to the Supreme Court where we just were, and they had to make the decision. Who qualifies as a Jew here? Ultimately, they upheld it, and they said no, he had chosen to leave Judaism. And so he was not allowed citizenship under the right to return. However, he still ended up coming to Israel, living here as in one of the Carmelite monasteries up in Haifa.
Right.
And he actually did get citizenship, but
just in a different
naturalization way, and not from the law of return.
Do you feel today that rule would be slightly different though? I feel like times have changed and you might be able to actually come under the law of return even if you've converted to a different religion.
Well,
I'd be tempted to say it would be different now.
I don't know. I don't know when the last time it's been challenged was.
So Nahlaot is a really good example of all that law of return and migration that we spoke about, because in this area, as we previously discussed, there is such a melting pot of cultures and races. It's fabulous.
I know, and if we talk about, especially if we go back to the time, 1949 or so,
Yeah.
you have airlifts from Yemen, and there's a section here from the Yemenite Jews.
Correct.
You have a place from Greece. This is a community that essentially was like totally obliterated during the Holocaust. Salonika, the port city, was closed on Shabbat because there was so many Jews there. Over 90% of them wiped out.
Right.
There is a Greek shul here, a Greek synagogue.
Right. Yeah.
And you get this whole mixture. Nahlaot, as I mentioned before, you really have this mixture of 32 different neighborhoods. Hence the name Nahlaot. It means like homesteads or inheritances.
Ah, okay.
A whole combination of different communities.
What's a great idea, if anyone out there, come here Friday night and just walk around the area, because there must be 50, 60 synagogues here, and you just get a weird combination of different style of prayers. It's great fun.
You're right, except for one thing.
Yes.
It's over 100 synagogues.
Over 100 synagogues, there you go.
And then
That's why we have him, guys. That's why we have him.
And then it's hiked to over 300 synagogues here.
Haha.
Now, we also have a more personal story about this neighborhood and people moving here. That's you.
It is me. I did not grow up here.
Sorry, you didn't grow up here. You lived here.
As you can hear from my accent, I did not grow up here.
So Daniel, you take us to Nahlaot. I'm following you right now.
Okay.
What's your story?
So my story is so born in London, England, and came to Israel with my family. I was 17, and my parents kind of moved around a few different areas, trying to look for the kind of area that suited them. So they lived in the nicer area of Shari Chesed, which was a much more expensive kind of Anglo community that way. And they lived in French. Yeah. It's a good thing to note. In Israel, guys, when you come here, everyone is your grandmother, everyone tells you what to do, you just get used to it. So it really, and then they sort of found this house on the market, this tiny little thing that no one wanted, and did it up. And they've lived there ever since, yes. And they kind of love it here because essentially my parents are a bunch of hippies. And so therefore they fit in really nicely in this area. And also they love being close to the open shuk, as we saw in one of the previous runs.
And we'll run through it.
And we run through it a little bit. And they love being part of the hubbub of Jerusalem, and you really feel it here. And it just gives them a chance to be more themselves, I think, than sort of being in grey London. And I lived in Nahlaot for 8 years, down the hill in one apartment, over that way in another apartment, and I love the feel here. And one of the biggest things I love about this place is that your neighbour on that side and your neighbour on that side is never going to be from the same background, race, colour.
Example, who are your neighbours?
So at one point above us, we had refugees from Eritrea. Our next door neighbours, he's Israeli from a Moroccan background, and he married a girl who converted from Argentina. Next to them was a guy from Russia who had made Aliyah. who married a girl who we met on a kibbutz program, who comes from not Costa Rica, somewhere in that area in the Mediterranean. So like, it's a massive, mad, just nutcase melting pot of everyone. It was brilliant.
One of the great things about living in Nahlaot right there must have been your proximity to children.
Firstly, one, best produce in the world, and it's always close by. Two, you ever come home late, 11 o'clock at night, you're a bit hungry, there's not really that much food around, walk 3 yards and whatever you want to eat is right here, and there's like 50 different types.
Well, I'm telling you, especially when you're like training for something, you're like doing 60, 70 mile a week.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you like wake up, whatever, and you like have this huge hunger.
Yes.
I gotta eat everything.
You gotta eat everything. Come to the shuk and you can eat everything. Maybe we'll do like some kind of walking tour through our favorite eateries throughout the shuk. There are so many. Some of them are fabulous. We're coming back out of the shuk and we're going to cross over to kind of a different section of the city now, which we haven't actually been before, which is the ultra-Orthodox side of the city.
Yeah, and there's a great building that kind of stands out here that we're going to get to in a moment. Another story of migration, that there's a Chassidic sect from Gur, from Gur.
Yes.
It was one of the largest...
Or Ger, depends where you come from.
Right.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
Largest sects of Chassidim that was in the world.
Yes.
And they get obliterated during the Holocaust.
Yes. Yes.
The rabbi at the time to the left, a guy named Imrit Emes, actually escaped the war, moved over here in 1940, but he died during the siege in Jerusalem.
Wow.
In 1948.
And this
They
is...
need a place to bury him. But can they bury him on the Mount of Olives?
No, you can't get there, it's siege.
No, because it's under siege.
It's Jordan. Yeah.
So they bury him right here.
It's like funny red brick, red tile. It's not very Israeli.
Right out of Poland.
I see. It went for like a shtetl feel. I mean, really, if you look all around us, like behind me is like a very stereotypical side of Jerusalem with this very old Jerusalem stone and its balconies that look like they're about to fall down any minute. And then this is sort of this red brick, very old European feel. It's very, very interesting. So we'll definitely do more of an expansive run into the old Orthodox side of the city, because it really is amazing with its own culture.
Yeah, it's so unlike everything else.
It's completely different. It's completely different. Just like in our other runs where we crossed over to the more Arab or Muslim sides of the city, the Haredi community or Orthodox community is also just its own space and its own wonderful little area in of itself. Okay, we're running back towards the center of town, and we're running back towards a hostel.
Yeah, so we're gonna get to this place. It's actually one of my favorite places for people to stay in Jerusalem.
Oh, okay.
And it's called Abraham Hostel. And the story is quite fascinating. It started by this guy, Mozinon, who was like many Israelis, went backpacking and exploring throughout parts of the world. One of the Israeli cultural things that you do
when you finish the army.
When you finish the army,
the IDF, and you go to India for 6 months.
Right, or South America, or wherever.
Australia
right?
is quite common, yeah.
Yeah. So he was doing this around wherever, and he noticed how hostels really made or break the experience. They make or break the experience.
Right.
And he figured at the time, because there were no real hostels or hostel experiences in Israel, and he says this would be an amazing place
to come backpacking.
To come backpacking, exactly. Right. So he actually doesn't start the one here. He starts one up in Nazareth, and that's the first hostel he opens. And he does an incredible job. It gets great reviews, and he decides, you know what? I'm gonna do one here in Jerusalem. So he gets a few partners with him, and they get this place. And why do they call it Abraham Hostel? Because he says that Abraham was the first backpacker. especially in this land, wandering around this land.
So it was really focused at, because lots of tourism in Israel, especially traditional tourism, is focused at Jews, the diaspora Jews, coming to visit in their yearly, bi-yearly visit as is traditional. And he much more focused at other cultures come to visit and experience the land as well, basically.
There's a whole mix of everybody there. Jews, non-Jews, Europeans, Australians, all continents.
Right.
And they really makes a great atmosphere there. And they run all kinds of tours. For example, there's something that runs out of there once a week called the Jerusalem Sunrise Cycling Tours. You know, which people should check out.
Michael? Who are they?
Which should check it out. It's a great, amazing place. You go bike riding around the city at sunrise. But that's just one of the examples. You have culinary things, and it's really a fun place to be. It's a good price, and they really pay attention to the details there. And there's also one in Tel Aviv now as well. So there's a few of these Abraham hostels around.
Amazing, love it. So we're kind of on the street called Bird Street, which is kind of the border between the centre of town and the ultra-Orthodox side of town. You watched the football last night?
What?
You watched the football?
The football?
Football.
No.
A game you play with your feet.
No, I went for a 17-kilometer run last night.
Is it? That's decent. I banged out solid 8. I did not do 60.
Did you pass me on the train tracks?
I wasn't on the train track.
Okay, somebody passed me and waved to me, and I had no idea who it was.
Wasn't me. I was in the Gunsack area.
I was in my
Saturday
zone.
night is usually a shorter run, and then I go to the bars in Gunsacker, do a whole bit of a bar workout. It's kind of fun. That's like my Saturday night traditional.
Oh, I thought you meant bars. I was like, I thought you were like, you know,
there's
like
no bars.
pounding
COVID,
it
my
down.
friend. No. There's no bars. I'm gonna head back to see the bars, but there's no bars. Coming back to the centre of town, the whole thing of today is migration and the moving of people. And we've seen birds, we've seen laws, we've seen Supreme Courts, or Supreme Court's singular really.
The Supreme Court.
Oh shite.
Don't get hit by a
We've seen
taxi
cars
cab.
that are trying to kill us. And we've seen the ultra-Orthodox side of the city a little bit. And now we're sort of running back to the main bit of town, crossing over King George Street. And we're going to run towards a street called Ben Yehuda,
That's right.
which is kind of the main thoroughfare. The traffic's not going to be with us today. Yeah, we can see you.
Let's go.
So Ben Yehuda is like the main thoroughfare, like the main street that everyone comes to. I think everyone, when they come to Israel, to Jerusalem, they have a walk down Ben Yehuda Street.
It's a big tourist place, a lot of shops, a lot of like things that you buy to bring home to all your family and friends, great restaurants.
Yes.
So yeah, you get a whole mix of people who have migrated here from all over the world to come and see it. But it's really ties together everything we talked about in this run quite nicely, because who was Ben Yehuda, Eliezer Ben Yehuda?
Right, who was he?
So, of all the people in the world responsible for the modern Hebrew language, he is really the pushing factor. You know, we've talked a lot about different languages here, right? You talked about you have the birds who come with the different bird calls and tweet tweets, right?
I'm sorry, what did I do?
They go tweet tweet.
Beautiful, Michael, love it, yeah.
Okay, and then you talked about your neighbors in Nahlaot being from all over the place.
Yeah.
Each of them come with their own language. But what's the main language that's spoken here in Israel?
Hebrew.
Hebrew.
Right.
Now, for us today, it seems, oh great, you know, speak Hebrew, but go back in time to the late 1800s when the Zionist movement is really starting to flourish and Jews are coming back to this land. They're not speaking Hebrew. Hebrew was a dead language.
And have it then for millennia, basically.
Pretty much the last time it was spoken as an official language somewhere was during the first temple period, 2,600 years ago.
Wow, goodness me.
And
that's a long time for a language to be on break, yeah?
Yeah, look, I mean, people...
It's like a country to say that Latin is a good language to speak.
Exactly. Look, people knew it. It was preserved in the scriptures. It was preserved in the
It was like an academic
text.
language.
In many ways, yes.
Yeah.
Jews would speak it a little bit to communicate with each other from different lands, but it was never really developed. And Eliezer Ben Yehuda said, no, we're coming back. We're reestablishing a Jewish state here. We're going to reestablish the language of the Jews, and that is Hebrew. And at the beginning, he he was ostracized for this in many ways.
Really?
He forced his family to speak nothing but Hebrew, and his son got bullied because of it.
Why was he ostracized?
Because there was a big debate. What language should we have here? Should it be Yiddish? Should it be German? But
did
ultimately,
many people see that Hebrew was like a holy language that shouldn't be used for common stuff?
that's a big part of it as
Right.
well. But the secular people who came here, who still had that connection to the ancient roots, said, no, we're reviving the Jewish sovereignty over this land. We're going to revive the Jewish language as well, and that's going to be Hebrew.
And today, as we can see around us, it's a language that's spoken to, it's academic, it's a business language, it's a legal language. Okay, Michael, that was a wonderful run. I'm going to keep my voice down a little bit because, again, I think there's people living around us and it's still quite early in the morning. Around 4 kilometers, we saw birds, we saw legislature, we saw ultra-Orthodox community, we saw the Shuk, we saw Nahlaot, we saw holy migration.
The Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court. Really wonderful thing. And really, it's you and I, it's one of our favorite runs. No traffic, just keep going the whole way. It's a really great run to be on.
Great run, great stories, and check us out on social media, subscribe to us, share with friends,
Yeah.
and
We'll see you next time. Running around Jerusalem, guys.
have a good one.
Cool.